And here's just a quick shot of all the groceries that I purchased for this prep. Keep in mind I prepped for Alex as well, so there's more groceries here than you would most likely need to buy. But you can also find a complete list of all the groceries in the description, so make sure to check that out. But I'm gonna start off by rinsing the red potatoes to get any dirt or grime off of them. And I'm not gonna use a potato scrubber, I'm just gonna use my hands this time. You could use a potato scrubber if you wanted. And then I'm gonna start by cutting the potato in half, and then take the other half and cut it in half again. And then I'm gonna cut it into smaller pieces or chunks. You really just wanna make sure that you try to cut them all about the same, thickness so that they cook at the same rate. And then I'm gonna take some tin foil and put them in my baking pans or dishes and just kind of pat it down. I didn't have enough roaster pans this week, so I used actual baking dishes. And then as I cut up the potatoes, I'm gonna separate them evenly so that each container has about the same amount. And then I'm gonna take some extra virgin olive oil and Flavor God Chipotle seasoning, and I'm gonna drizzle some extra virgin olive oil over the potatoes, about 2 to 3 tablespoons. And then I'm gonna sprinkle some of the Chipotle Flavor God seasoning on them as well. And then once that's done, just gonna mix them around. I use my hands. You could use, a wooden spatula or, regular spatula to mix them around. But again, I just find that the hands are the easiest tool to use here to mix these things. Then I'm gonna go ahead and preheat the oven to 400 degrees and let those cook for about 50 to 60 minutes. But the last 10 minutes, I'm gonna broil them. And then onto the meatloaf. So I'm gonna measure out 2 cups of old-fashioned oatmeal. And this is to replace the breadcrumbs. You usually put breadcrumbs in like meatloaf to keep it together, but I'm using oatmeal because it's a little healthier. So I'm just putting it on a NutriBullet. You could also use a blender. You wanna just make sure it's ground into like a fine powder. And then I'm gonna take an onion, wash it. I bought a peeled onion this week, so I didn't have to peel off that white outer layer. And I forgot to put paper towels under my cutting board. It helps to keep the cutting board from sliding. Thank you to my subscribers who told me about that. So now it won't slide as much, but I'm just gonna cut the onion in half and then proceed to just cut it into smaller pieces. Until you have something that looks about like this. Then in my roaster pans, I'm gonna put the ground turkey, the 93.7 ground turkey, 2 packages of that, and the 90.10 ground beef, 1 package of that. I'm gonna put half of the onions, and then I'm gonna add some extra virgin olive oil, as well as some Flavor God seasoning. This one is everything. And then I'm gonna add about half of the ground oatmeal and mix this together. And then once I kind of have it at a consistency where most of the oatmeal has been soaked up or mixed in with the ground beef, then I'm gonna go ahead and add the other half of the oatmeal and then continue to mix that together until it looks something like this. And then I'm gonna cook these for about 30 to 35 minutes. And then in my cookie sheets, I'm gonna line those with tinfoil as well. Again, just didn't buy enough roaster pans this week. And I'm going to take the flank steak and I'm just gonna separate them on those and then season them with sea salt, black pepper, Worcestershire, and honey. So I'm gonna start with some honey and coat them all. And then I'm gonna move on to some Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire, it's a hard word to say. And then put some pepper on it. And then move to sea salt. The longer you let this marinate, the better it would probably soak in and taste. I just don't let it marinate that long because, I'm just ready to cook after I'm done putting this in or putting the sauces on. But then you just kind of want to spread it around the entire piece of meat, making sure it all gets coated. Then I'm going to remove the potatoes as well as the meatloaf, and I'm going to add the flank steak to the oven, and that's going to cook for about 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes. If you have a thicker piece, it's going to take a little bit longer to cook, and you might want to pull out your smaller pieces earlier. Then move on to the asparagus. I'm just gonna put it in my strainer and rinse it off. I'm gonna leave the rubber bands on it because again, a subscriber told me that makes it easier, and it does. So I'm gonna leave them on, I'm gonna cut off the tips, and then I'm gonna move them into my roaster pans and then take the, rubber bands off of them. It just keeps them all from sliding around everywhere. Then once I have that done, I'm gonna add some extra virgin olive oil. I'm gonna add some black pepper, and then I'm also gonna add some sea salt. Again, very simple seasonings. You guys could add any, additional seasoning or different seasonings that you would like. I just keep it simple most of the time. I think the vegetables and the meat taste good, with light seasoning. Moving on to the green beans, I'm just gonna rinse them off. I bought pre-cut or pre-snipped green beans this week, so I didn't have to cut off the tips. And then I'm gonna add some bacon this week as well. So I'm just gonna take my package of bacon and chop it up into, smaller pieces. How small, it's kind of up to you. But they will cook down a little bit and become smaller. Then I'm gonna add them to a little skillet and kind of mix them around. Let them cook for a little bit until they're cooked down like this, they're fully cooked. And then I'm going to add them to my bacon green beans. I'm not gonna drain out any of the grease. I'm gonna kind of just use it, and then I'm gonna split it between the two and then mix this around. You'll wanna make sure that it's kind of cooled before you, add it to the green beans and start to mix it around. Otherwise you will burn your hands. And then I'm gonna pop those in the oven and cook those for about 15 minutes. All right, now I'm gonna start weighing out the meatloaf. Now this meatloaf has only about a cup of the ground oatmeal. I made one with a cup of ground oatmeal and then one with 2 cups of ground oatmeal. So this is Alex's meal, and again, it only has a cup of ground oatmeal, and it weighs about 9 ounces. So anywhere from 9 to 10 ounces of meatloaf for this meal. And then for my meal, I have about 10 to 12 ounces because I added 2 cups of the ground oatmeal. And then moving on to the green beans, I don't weigh out the green beans. I'm just taking a spatula and I'm adding about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of green beans to each meal. And that is it for that meal. Then moving on to the next. I have the flank steak here. I'm just gonna cut it into smaller slices and then weigh out about 6 to 7 ounces of it per meal. And this is probably a good point to bring up. As I said in my previous video, I didn't know exactly how much flank steak I would need, if it would be enough. If you're not sure if you have enough, it's better to weigh out less and know that you're gonna have enough for all your meals than to weigh out too much and have to go picking out of each meal. Moving on to the potatoes, Alex is getting about 9 ounces of the red potatoes, and I probably should have got 2 of the smaller packages. If you watch my previous video, I bought 1 large bag of red potatoes and then I bought 1 smaller bag. I should have bought 2 smaller bags, most likely, because it wasn't quite enough. I would have liked a little bit more potato, but again, he's getting 9 ounces in that meal, and I'm getting about 10 to 11 ounces in my meal. I would like to have more, like 12 ounces in my meal. But moving on to the asparagus, again, I don't weigh out these veggies, but it's gonna be anywhere from 1.5 cups to 2 cups, roughly, of the asparagus for each meal. And that is it for this meal prep, and here are all the meals. And again, you can find the groceries as well as the macros for each meal in the description.